Hey beautiful people, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm gonna go over some of my best tips on how to write a quality personal statement, and I'm gonna be sharing with you the personal statement that got me admitted to LSE, University of Edinburgh, University of Bristol, and King's College London for law. Since a lot of you may be thinking about your applications or actively working on them, I really hope this video is useful for you. I was in your exact same place last year when I was writing my college applications and my essays, so I know the struggle. The personal statement can seem like a huge challenge because you're trying to sell yourself in 4,000 characters or less. But believe me, with these tips, it can definitely be done. The first thing that your personal statement should be is unique. Now, I know this is going to sound super cliche, but yes, your personal statement needs to make you stand out. Unlike in the application system for US universities, your personal statement needs to be unique yet academic. Your personal statement needs to highlight what makes you special as a student and as a person, but in a way that reflects your academic interest. Unlike the college essay in the US, which is definitely more focused on personality and background. My next tip is to give a theme or some consistency to your personal statement that is reflected elsewhere in your application. I talked about this in my previous videos, but think about the fact that you are one of thousands applying to a given university, maybe even for the same course. So you need to find something that makes you unique, and you need to exploit the heck out of that. So, for example, if you're very passionate about a specific area of your subject, or if you've done competitions, if you've won prizes, if something about your history is related to your specific subject, all of these things should be part of your application. You can find a way to incorporate them in your essay and in your references and give your whole application some consistency. This will make you stand out even more. Your personal statement needs to demonstrate that you are engaged in the study of your subject beyond the school environment. This, for me and for most people, can largely be seen in two ways: in the reading that you choose to do outside of school and in your extracurricular activities. For instance, as you'll see in my personal statement, I decided to talk about a lot of books that I read related to law and also to extracurricular activities that were linked to what I wanted to study in university. Now, obviously, this will differ from person to person, but make sure that you can show that you have been proactive in the study of this subject and that you care about it so much that you have devoted time to it beyond the school environment. My next tip is to connect everything in your personal statement back to your course. For instance, in their personal statement, a lot of people choose to talk about the subjects that they took at school. Now, this is great, except that if you're just talking about your subjects to talk about your subjects, then you are wasting valuable characters in your personal statement. Instead, what you need to do is say, the study of this subject helped me understand this specific area or this sub-discipline within the greater subject, so that now I know this. For instance, in my personal statement, I talked about two of my higher level subjects, history and politics, and the links that I had found between them and the law. And when I was talking about my subjects, you will see that I picked specific things. I didn't just say the study of politics helped me understand this. I mentioned specific theories and authors or historical events. So that is what you should do in your personal statement. If it's for a science subject, it's even easier. You can highlight theories and concepts that perhaps challenged you, or that made you think more about your subject, or that made you really excited about your course. And you also need to connect back to your course when you are discussing your extracurricular activities and your readings. For instance, when you're discussing your readings, don't just say, this book made me excited to study this. Mention quotes or something about the author, or some way that the book challenged your way of thinking about that specific subject. Don't be generic when you are describing things in your personal statement. And the same applies to your extracurricular activities. If you did, for instance, Duke of Edinburgh, and you're applying for something like natural sciences, and you want to talk about how seeing the flora and the fauna on your Gold Duke of Edinburgh hike inspired you to study more about a specific species, or something of that sort, then it makes sense, but make that link direct. If you are just gonna put in your personal statement that you did Duke of Edinburgh like the rest of humanity for no reason, then you are again wasting character. Next tip is, if it's not related to your subject, then it does not belong in your personal statement. You might have done many extracurricular activities throughout high school or sixth form, but if they are not related to what you want to study, don't just put them in your personal statement to gain some characters. Instead of filling your personal statement with what is essentially useless information, try to think more about your subject or about things that you have read, and instead try to make those clear connections between your personal life or your academic life and between what you would like to study at university. But do not waste characters on things that are not related to your subject. Next, avoid superficial explanations in your personal statement. These are things like, this book made me want to study my subject. Great Gatsby made me want to study English literature. Instead, you need to show depth in your explanations and connections in your subject. For example, X book developed my interest in this specific field of my subject, or this idea challenged my thought about this part of my subject, or something that I read made me wonder this. Going back to the English literature example, a better way to show your understanding or your appreciation of a given text would be to say something along the lines of, analyzing Fitzgerald's use of symbolism in The Great Gatsby allowed me to greater appreciate the literary choices made by authors and their impact on the development of plot and character. For instance, something along those lines that applies to your subject. Just make sure that it shows depth and understanding and not just a superficial interest in a given topic. My next tip, and this is one of the most important things, avoid cliches at all cost. That means no, ever since I was 5 years old, or I always wanted to be a biochemist. None of that does not belong in your personal statement. So if you're drafting it right now and you have any of those sentences or anything along the lines of, I've always dreamed about being this, or any cliche, get rid of it. The next thing is super evident, but please make sure that there are no grammar, spelling, or structural mistakes in your essay. And the best way to do this is by editing the heck out of it and having someone else proofread it. My last tip is to make sure that it is well structured and easy to read, which leads me on to my next section, which is about structure. I'm going to share with you the structure that I use for my own personal statement and that I think can be applied to a lot of other subjects and that works universally. And lastly, I'm going to read my personal statement for your enjoyment. Structure your personal statement is, of course, based on my opinion and on my own experience. It is just a rough guideline, but what I will say is the outline that I used was one that I saw in a lot of other successful personal statements and that I think works pretty universally. What I will say though is this is just a general structure, so if you choose to follow the template that I have, try to avoid sounding formulaic, mix it up, change the order of the paragraphs, or try to incorporate different aspects into each paragraph. But the outline that I used and that worked for me was in paragraph 1, I had a very brief introduction that instantly hooked the admissions officer or the reader. Paragraph 2, I discussed some of the readings that I had done outside of class that were related to my subject. So I talked about a few different books that I had read and what they made me think about, some of the ways that they challenged the way that I was already thinking, or what they taught me about the course that I was applying for, and just explain some of the connections that I was able to make between my reading and my course, or my reading in real life. In paragraph 3, I would say what I did and what I think works for all personal statements is to explain how the subjects that you are taking currently at school, or that you have taken if you are currently on a gap year, have fostered your interest in the course that you're applying for, or how they have developed your intellectual abilities in that specific subject area. So for instance, I decided to talk about history and politics because they were what I found to be most relevant to the study of law, and I explained theories and concepts that I had learned in class and related them back to the study of law. And obviously this will differ subject by subject, but just in general, think about things that you have already done. They may not match perfectly to what you're studying, especially if you don't have the option to take your subject at A level or at IB, but just try to make connections. And sometimes the more unusual connections are the ones that are the most interesting and that actually surprise admissions officers, and that will make you look more inquisitive and intellectual. In the fourth paragraph, I would say very briefly describe any extracurricular activities that you've done that are related to your subject. And I say very briefly because, again, you only have 4,000 characters. You need to make the most out of your personal statement. So unless the activities that you have done outside of school are very, very relevant to your course, try to avoid mentioning them too much or at all, if possible, in your personal statement. For my last paragraph, paragraph 5, I would say write a very short conclusion that wraps up your personal statement and that ends with an impactful line. So your conclusion is going to be the last thing that your admissions officer sees about your personal statement and about you as an applicant. So make sure that it captures their attention and that it really encompasses the spirit of your personal statement. And now I'm actually going to read my personal statement for law that got me admitted to Edinburgh, Bristol, King's College London, and LSE. An injustice is tolerable only when it is necessary to avoid an even greater injustice. These words struck me while reading Rawls' A Theory of Justice. I had believed that a utilitarian approach to justice was best. However, Rawls' argument convinced me otherwise. I came to realize that justice, like the law, is highly subjective, and thus its effectiveness cannot be deduced on a quantitative basis. Various texts have expanded my interest in the law. Tom Bingham's The Rule of Law introduced me to the pillars of the rule of law and the contrast between this concept and the rule by law. It also exposed me to several differences between common and civil law systems, as well as their approach to justice. Helena Kennedy's Just Law allowed me to understand the necessity to uphold the rule of law and protect civil liberties, particularly in the 21st century. As a young adult, Kennedy's ideas about the vital need for the modernization of the state, the current commercialization of the justice system, and the necessary debureaucratization of social institutions highlighted issues that challenged the effectiveness of the justice system. Likewise, her argument regarding the erosion of civil liberties encouraged me to take a more critical perspective on laws and political attitudes, particularly regarding terrorism and counterterrorism. I regularly listen to the BBC's Law in Action podcast, which has increased my awareness of contemporary legal issues. Discrimination against women in the workplace, data protection legislation, and the legal complexities behind Brexit are some of the subjects that I found most intriguing due to their potential impact on my own life. The differing approaches to social sciences and humanities have broadened my reasoning abilities. Politics introduced me to a scientific approach. This challenged me to engage with political, social, and legal issues in a methodological manner. Theories, such as intersectionality and just war theory, allowed me to explore the interconnectivity of law and politics. Intersectionality showed me how social institutions, such as the justice system, can perpetuate discrimination by addressing it on a single axis base, race, gender, or class. Just war theory exposed me to the legal and moral necessity of maintaining just conduct before, during, and after war. The jus post bellum aspect of the theory particularly interested me due to its connection with areas of international and human rights law, including the prosecution of war criminals and the treatment of refugees. My experience volunteering with Syrian refugees allowed me to witness a failure to carry out justice after war, due to uncoordinated efforts amongst actors and complexities in legislation. History taught me the value of a critical and analytical approach to knowledge. Understanding the impact of legislation and its ability to support injustice enhanced my awareness of the law's significance. Hitler's American Model by James Whitman enabled me to understand the significance of the Nuremberg laws. Through its analysis of German and American legislation, which both promoted forms of racial discrimination, the book introduced me to the field of comparative law. Participating in Model United Nations furthered my interest in law. Having been selected as Deputy Chair of the Legal Committee of THIMA 2018, I was tasked with reporting on the resolution, strengthening the rule of law through ombudsman institutions. This enabled me to research a legal topic in depth while introducing me to concepts such as ombudsman institutions and alternative dispute resolution. Participating in my school's speech and debate society challenged my argumentative skills and ability to rapidly formulate ideas. While debate obliged me to familiarize myself with procedure and etiquette, impromptu speaking required me to be creative and speedy in my reasoning and discourse. Working with various marginalized groups increased my awareness of the structural inequality present within my community. The stories of those I encountered have inspired me to be a force of change on a local level. Through my academic career, I desire to continue this endeavor on a larger scale. So that was it for my personal statement, and that's all I have to share for this particular video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you found it helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel for more college-related videos. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!